Okay. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around for the forum. Since the first day of the conference, we've been trying to push this session because it's actually one that will benefit, I think, you, the audience, the most. As I introduced it during the first day of the conference, the forum is a moderated, quite open type of discussion among you. And we have some guided questions, we have some polls, some rankings, some quizzes that you can participate in. That's why you need your smartphone, which hopefully can read QR codes. And I'd ask you to prepare them for now. And we'll start with this forum session. So we're happy to celebrate the first year of the forum. We introduced the forum last year at this conference in March in 2024. So the forum is 1 year old. It's been doing very well. It traveled around the world. In 2024, it traveled to obviously Tokyo, Kyoto, Paris, London, Barcelona, Hawaii, and it finally came back to Tokyo. So we always structure the forum around global citizenship, and we try to adjust the topic and the theme to the local place that we are. As I introduced before, for example, in Hawaii, one of the main concerns for the Pacific Islands is climate change. So in January, during the Hawaii conference, we did global citizenship and climate change action. So for this one, following from the panel and the keynote speech that we had this morning, obviously the theme of this forum will be global citizenship, education, human and artificial intelligence. So how this goes is I moderate the session. I haven't introduced myself, sorry. My name is Melina. I am the Academic Operations Manager at IAFOR. So I'm responsible for the academic program of the conference, and I will be moderating this session. And I always invite an expert respondent to co-moderate and lead this discussion, who will be listening to all of your discussions and guiding according to his expertise. This time we have with us Dr. Emiliano Bosio from Toyo University, Japan. And I will hand over to him to introduce himself in the topic. Yes.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well. Thank you for coming. This is lunchtime, but I can see we have a great audience. I want to start off with introducing myself. My name is Emiliano Bosio. I'm a professor of education based in Japan, currently with Toyo University and Sophia University, where I do some part-time teachings. And I'm also a book author. I do like academic writing. And as you can see here, I wanted to share with you a little bit of my work and publications. I'm the author of Global Citizenship Education in the Global South, published by BRILL. I'm also the chief editor for Conversations on Global Citizenship Education, published by Routledge. The Emergence of the Ethically Engaged University, published by Springer. And more recently, and I have the book here with me today, in Cambridge University Press, we published a book called Ethical Global Citizenship Education. And I stress the importance of this book, not only because it's published by a well-known publisher, Cambridge University Press, but because it's written in a way that is accessible and describes global citizenship education as an ethical platform oriented towards fostering students' ethical values and critical values, considering the super complexities of our current societies. And I use societies on purpose because we have a great diversity. I'm also currently the chief editor of the Oxford Handbook on Global Citizenship Education, to be published by Oxford University Press. That will be a great project because it captures current trends on global citizenship, giving voices to senior scholars, but also emerging scholars. And then lastly, I want to thank Joseph Aldan for inviting me to talk today. One of the reasons why I accepted this invitation is that the forum provides a dialogic platform which invites you in the audience to express your ideas on this very, and I should say, highly debated concept of global citizenship. Later on, I will explain what is global citizenship education briefly and how does it connect to artificial intelligence and possibilities and challenges. Next slide. I want to mention that I'm also the director and editor of the Global Citizenship Education Interview Series. The series, publicly available on YouTube, has welcomed to date more than 50 scholars worldwide, including James Banks from the University of Washington, who is widely recognized as the father of multicultural education. Then we welcomed Simon Mergenson, Oxford University, Carlos Alberto Torres, UCLA, Karen Pashbai, Manchester Metropolitan University, all experts directly and indirectly related to this discussion on what is global citizenship education, how it relates to multicultural education. As you can see, James Banks talks about to know, to care, and to act. And you can see here that other scholars interpret and understand the notion of global citizenship education in different ways that are all precious and all quite interesting and challenging. So the interview series on global citizenship education is a digital, ethically oriented platform which I conceptualized to give voices to scholars worldwide, initially with having main expertise on global citizenship, but now the series with more than 3,000 subscribers, members, quickly became a sustainability-oriented platform where I invite not only experts on global citizenship, but also individuals who are really committed to foster social justice, sustainability, ethical values, transformative values. We had guests from the UNESCO network. We had book authors, entrepreneurs. We have Joseph Harden from the International Academic Forum, who brought in his perspectives on this very important network organization. So it's quickly becoming a platform oriented to give voices to educators, entrepreneurs, book writers, scholars, educators, practitioners, and so on. And it's also a good way, in a way, to add on the current field of global citizenship education fresh ideas, which oftentimes, as the case for ethical global citizenship education, then quickly become output, academic output for either special issues in academic journals. I'm currently editing a special issue with UNESCO prospects, but also they become real books. So it's a quite interesting platform. I just want to begin our forum by defining global citizenship education. Perhaps some of you are new to the concept. And so I generally share this definition. Global citizenship education focuses on developing the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that learners need to be able to contribute to a more inclusive, just, and peaceful world. Yet this is the definition by UNESCO, is widely accepted and discussed when it comes to global citizenship education. Now, the central question is concerned with the relationship between global citizenship education and AI, because this allows you to build up your ideas and try to frame this whole conversation on global citizenship within the context of artificial intelligence, which nowadays has already created a lot of discussions on its power, but also on its challenges. And so here, as you can see, you have some bullet points. Global citizenship education as a potential guiding framework, in the sense that it might help us to direct our students, learners, towards using AI in a way that is sustainable and ethically oriented. Then we have AI strengths versus human intelligence. It's true that AI is very helpful, but does it really provide a critical thinking approach to what's going on in our current societies? This is a question. An ethical and responsible AI use, global citizenship education, if framed critically and ethically, might help us to guide conversations on responsible uses of AI. And then lastly, integrating global citizenship education into AI development and the future of AI, an educational and moral question. As I often write in my books and publications, there is no planet B. So we better use AI in a way that helps us to contribute to the common good. And I will leave it there. And Melina now will move on with the rest of the conversation, and then we can all discuss together critically and ethically. Thank you.
So before we dive into the meat of today's session, we'll start lightly with an icebreaker question. So I would like all of you to stand up and find someone that you don't know, or maybe you have met during the 2 days of the conference, and ask if, have you ever treated or talked to a machine as if it were a living thing? I guess, I don't want to be sexist, but I guess most men like to name their cars. Do you? Is anybody who likes to do that? Or anybody who talks to Alexa, yeah. Like, have you ever talked to Alexa as if it's a human being? Have you said please? Have you said thank you to it? Go on, ask each other. Okay. Time's up. Time's up. Please take your seats. Please take your seats. You can share your answers with all of us. Okay, does anybody want to share with the rest of us what you heard the other person say? Anybody? Has anybody talked to a machine?
A lot of, yeah. And also when you stand up to, can you please stand up as well and tell us where you're from? Hold on a second.
Hold on
a second. We can't hear you.
I talked to a paint spot on the wall in my house when I was a kid and there was no one to play with. What's the difference between that and a machine? I don't know.
Anyone else have something? Thank you.
Marva Ferguson, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We had a great discussion and we talked about so many ways that we talk to machines. ChatGPT, Rogers, for those of you who use the Canadian telephone companies, health, insurance companies, airline, and I can go on and on. So we do use machines every day.
Sanjeev brought up a really good point about how we have expectations and how we project those expectations onto our machines. And then, of course, when it doesn't meet our expectation, how do we respond and react to that?
I personally always try to say please and thank you because I feel like the machine is learning from me and I don't want to be responsible for creating a machine in the future, an AI in the future that doesn't care about us. So I want to teach it manners, I guess. Okay, well, connected to this then, and I want you to get your smartphones out and scan this QR code, and then you'll be able to vote. So connected to that, should AI ever truly understand human emotions?
I think, should is the key word here. Not can, should.
Okay, so it depends on the motivations, whether it's used for good or evil. Okay.
Okay, so with regards to the microphone, we are live online. So if you're not speaking to the microphone, we can't hear anything. Okay, so please be aware of that.
Anybody else?
Anyone else?
It depends, or yes?
So I actually answered no for this, and the reason for that is as a kind of preventative measure against those exact kind of potential misuses that it could have in the future. So I don't think I'm particularly comfortable with Google and Microsoft knowing my personal thoughts and feelings about things, and I don't think that it's a beneficial function for society to have where AI is developed by those companies can use them for commercial purposes or even more nefarious purposes in the case of maybe like an authoritarian country or something. I don't think it would be a beneficial thing overall.
I'm going to speak a little bit to the no as well. AI can read our signals and it can kind of reflect empathy. So let's say somebody's depressed and it can be very empathic, but when does it know instinctively, intuitively, empathically how to shift from, yes, I understand that's difficult, to, it's time to take action now. It's time to make a plan and move forward. And so that takes a certain level of emotional intelligence that I don't believe we can program into AI, at least not at this phase. That takes a certain kind of energetic relationship between two people.
I'm going to answer no as well, because what's good to you might be evil to me. So who is the right person to decide what's good to who?
I answered no as well. I guess in my mind, I think every individual has their own idiosyncrasies and individual differences, and should AI be able to recognise, and can AI, I know the word should, but identify that everyone's emotional response might be very different, and is it fair to expect that AI should be able to sort of recognise that?
I'm surprised that the majority is like, it depends, and yes, but
No one wants to fight for it.
People speaking about no.
No, I will also go with the no brigade. The thing is that, see, it is artificial intelligence. It is not human. Human emotions are far more complex than, just adding to or, trying to make two ends meet somewhere down the line. So AI is basically at the moment structured to follow certain commands, the way I look at it. It should follow what humans intend it to do. That's it. So I don't think emotions would really play a part in that. Thank you.
So you want a goal-oriented machine. So you tell it what to do, and that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Okay.
That's
for the sake of time, I'm just going to bring it back to the classroom, into education, and ask, for what purpose are we using AI in the classroom? Why does it need to understand human emotions? Well, some of you said yes. So why would it need to understand it, or why would it not need to understand it? There's one in the back on your side.
Can you put your hands up so I can see? Thank you.
Can you also say where you're from?
Yes, it helps us write the report afterwards.
Far away. I'm Carla Bloom. I'm a teacher at the University System of Georgia in the United States. So what's interesting to me is that AI, I think, is going to help us understand our students' emotional relationships, the complexities of them growing up using AI. So I think there's new sets of emotions that are emerging that are not defined yet. And I think that AI is going to understand them better than we can right now. So I think in that light that we need to let AI do some of the work, and we just don't know what that work is yet.
Yeah, Hans Code. I've worked in the area of emotion-focused therapy, and what I've learned is that if someone presents themselves as being angry, that's a secondary emotion, and so they're more likely to be hurt, or there's fear, or there's disgust. And so every time I meet someone who's angry, so the emotion is anger, But as a therapist, and particularly if you've built a relationship with your client, you can move that from anger to probably hurt, probably fear, or probably disgusted. And so the underlying emotion is not actually the emotion that's you're seeing on the person. So I don't know whether an AI machine could do that.
Cindy from the University of Queensland and the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia. Coming to your question here about the purpose of AI in the classroom, definitely differentiation and access to learning for students with various learning barriers. That's definitely a positive and a very big yes from me.
Does that align with what global citizenship education tries to involve AI with?
Yeah, I think we got some good input on that. The thing is that we have a tool. We have a tool that can help us to contribute to the common good, but can also perhaps increase evil and in a way examine what we think in a context, in a society that is super independent and super interconnected. So here, I believe, is where the notion of educating for global citizenship kicks in. Although before moving on with thoughts on the notion of global citizenship education, the term global is often criticized because people think that global citizenship education is all about the global. Actually, it's about the interconnection between the local and the global. I wanted to make this premise because otherwise we misunderstand the importance of global citizenship education. When it comes to AI, I mean, I'm not an expert on AI, to be honest. I'm an expert on global citizenship. But what I can see, this pedagogical platform intervention being very precious is really to put back on the table discussions about ethical values, critical values, foster critical thinking, and then contextualizing these thoughts within the context of globalization and the complexities that globalization offers to our learners and to us as educators, practitioners, and entrepreneurs, and so on. So the real function of global citizenship education, particularly ethical global citizenship education, as I frame it in this Cambridge University Press book, is really to put back on the table the importance of ethical values such as social justice, contributing to the common good. What does it mean nowadays to be a citizen in this super complex political situation we live in? What does it mean leadership as well? Because we have leaders who at the moment are not able to engage in a dialogue that is productive and sustainable. And therefore we have multiple conflicts happening worldwide. So what this whole discussions on ethical global citizenship education does is really to tell our learners and individuals really, you know, there are global issues, there are local issues. In between, we have a pedagogical approach that potentially at least is transformative, sustainable, is ethically oriented, if interpreted in this way, because then there are many other interpretations of global citizenship education that just neoliberal oriented. So just exclusively focused on fostering global human resources rather than critical global citizens. And I also wrote a piece on that, particularly in Japan, unfortunately, because there is all this test culture and so on. But framing this discussion on global citizenship education in relation to AI really multiplies the opportunities. And later on, I'm curious to learn from you what you think about the notion of global citizenship education. Framing global citizenship education and AI in this context, in this forum today, it really offers opportunities to ask a fundamental question. You know, why do we get an education? Why do we get particularly an higher education? We know what are the purposes of educating the so-called global citizens in the context of, again, I use this term on purpose again and again, complexities of our interconnected societies. So I think this is you know, a core question, and I don't think it's only an academic question. It's really an intellectual, it's a philosophical question. So you don't need to be really an academic to answer this question. What are the purposes of education nowadays? to conclude, one of the merits of this discussion on global citizenship education is exactly that. It brings back on the table discussions around the purposes of education in relation to AI, in relation to the interconnectedness and complexities of our current societies. And so I will stop here because I'm curious to learn your perspectives, and I really welcome, critical perspectives too, because these are really important when it comes to dynamic discussion on global citizenship. I think you need to wait for the mic because we have an audience, an online
Good
audience.
afternoon, everybody. My name is Judy. I'm from Auckland, New Zealand. And this is the first time I've come to one of your conferences. I am an educational psychologist. I was a secondary school teacher, and I wrote my PhD about inclusive education in the secondary school system. Now, listening to what happened in the previous forum and listening to what's happening now, it appears to me that the big division between what you're talking about, globalized citizenship, and what the previous forum spoke about is social equity. For example, social equity forms the basis of inclusive education for special educational needs for students who may be ADHD, who may have ASD, who may have a range of educational difficulties during their time. I can see the purpose of AI working quite nicely for them on a localized basis, working with a psychologist and working within a school. But I don't see AI at this point being a global factor in how education is planned for, is delivered, is assessed as well. We also need to have a very fortuitous discussion with our communities. After all, it is the communities that send their children to school. And we have to be very careful that we don't walk on them or walk over them under the basis of social equity. Thank you.
Well, to start, I guess, the conversation on how it is applied in education. I don't know why the clicker is not working.
That won't work either.
Can you move to the next slide?
Yeah.
I think we need to ask the question first. And I realize that not all of you are educators, so you can answer from the perspective of young people. The majority of students, or my students, are goal-oriented, process-oriented, both but leaning towards goal-oriented, or both but leaning towards process-oriented. How do you evaluate students? Okay, so it looks like goal-oriented is leading, and perhaps therein lies the problem. And why I'm asking this question is perhaps you may have read about this this news or whatever when developers tried to shut down. I think it was a version of ChatGPT. It tried to save itself, so it rewrote itself on another server to prevent itself from shutting down. Well, that's pretty concerning, but why did it do that? They reasoned that it did that because it's programmed to be goal-oriented. So you tell it to do a task, and it does that at all costs. Now, that's causing a lot of ethical dilemmas. For example, there have been practical applications of AI in military situations where you had AI drones telling them to bomb a specific target. Now, if that target is among civilians, AI will not distinguish. You told him or it to bomb a certain target, and it will not take into consideration that there are civilians there. So it will just bomb and kill everybody. That is the meaning of being goal-oriented. So if you're saying that most of your students or students in general are leading towards being goal-oriented, that's a big concern. And the question is the current education system turning students' human intelligence more and more to become like artificial intelligence? And what is the difference even between human and artificial intelligence then? Does anybody want to elaborate on that?
So again, in my case, I put goal-oriented, but I actually don't think it's necessarily such a bad thing if it's done correctly. So in my current research, I'm looking at one of the scholarship programs that JICA runs. And one of the things in the selection process for certain countries is having them solve a developmental problem as part of their research when they come to Japan. So they have a specific goal in mind when they come here, and everything is about empowering them to achieve that goal. So some examples of things that they worked on were things like using AI for malaria prevention by essentially using it to figure out where mosquito hotspots would be. That's a really great use of AI, and giving them the tools to pursue that goal, I think, is a really useful thing. In a couple of other cases, they were doing things related to agriculture and forestry management using AI. And I think it kind of is in line with what the gentleman said a little while ago about how AI can be used as a goal-oriented tool rather than just a general thing. If we're using AI for that kind of purpose, I think it can have a great deal of good, and empowering students to achieve those goals can be a very positive thing.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Russell from the Philippines, and I would definitely say that the problem isn't necessarily that the education system is turning our students more goal-oriented, but it's so much more on how they process that goal-orientedness. Because when students are often preoccupied with these different goals, of course, they have these ambitions. But how they arrive at those ambitions and fulfill them is the one that becomes problematic, because over-glorification of grades, being extrinsically motivated, are often the ones associated with all of these different learning challenges that would lead students to perhaps take an easier route, to use AI as a way for them to just obtain the high grades that they need to accomplish this particular task and to produce these different outputs, which then robs them of the authentic experience of actually experiencing the creative process. And this is where the discussion should actually focus on. How can we use AI to help students become much more creative thinkers, and how we can use it as a way to tap their creative intelligence in order to arrive in those different goal-oriented, perhaps, ambitions in a much more meaningful manner. And this is something that maybe we could actually focus on as educators and, of course, mental health professionals in the community.
So if we go back to the previous question, then AI for you in the classroom should be used for the purpose of furthering creative thinking. So used in a good way, and not just to reach a goal, but to implement it into the process.
Yes, I think a process experience it really is the case. So it makes me remember the movie of Good Will Hunting. There's the counselor and the bad and knowledgeable students. That story, yeah, that movie. So yeah, so I think yeah, we can distill all of the knowledge in the whole world to AI. Yeah, but then it still it won't get older. AI won't get older. Yeah, although it's really knowledgeable. Yeah, so the thing is it won't have the ups and downs like a human. It just know all of the knowledge in the world. And yeah, so the thing is the process may be more essential in this case. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm based in Singapore. I'm currently studying a postgrad in gerontology, and in my cohort, I sit in a room full of adult learners, and I guess like it depends what kind of students do you have, because I've noticed that for adult learners, they tend to be more process-oriented in the sense that they still use AI, but to break down the complex concepts like in those PDFs and such. So it helps them be able to critically think what the task is for. But I think there's a risk and perils of using AI for younger students, because like I've seen that for my siblings' generation, they tend to take in information as it is. So I guess like I'm not an educator, but I guess like it's a job of educators to encourage students to critically think and maybe connect what are the latent constructs like related to the concepts that we're looking at. And I guess like in terms of difference between human and artificial intelligence, well, I guess like for human intelligence, there's always this aspect of creativity, whereas for artificial intelligence, it's always going to be algorithm based. So I guess it depends on what the human trains it for, and on the human, and then related back to the human, whether like, is this even right to begin with? Because no model is going to be perfect.
So I guess it goes back to, should AI understand humans' emotions? Do we want it to reach that point where it's not goal-oriented anymore, but it actually helps assist? Yeah.
Yeah, my name's Michael. I'm working out of the addiction medicine team at the Royal Melbourne Hospital in Australia. I guess my work is very clinical and in clinical space, and pretty much follow on from the previous sort of a person talking about the differences between human and artificial intelligence. When I think about human intelligence, I think about innovation, creativity, also judgment. We work with a lot of patients who are extremely drug affected. We're making clinical decisions around treatment and involuntary treatment. And I think when we think about the difference between human judgment and decision making, particularly clinical decision making, I guess we can translate that to also education and teaching as well. But I think there's an element of judgment and being able to sort of make decisions that may not necessarily fit a particular formula that may exist, you know, or are created in that. Sometimes there is some risk and concerns that might come from just depending on artificial intelligence when people may not necessarily fit a particular box because of their current mental state, or because of situations that are pertinent to them where we may need to make decisions outside, you know, what would otherwise be, you know, specific, you know, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway.
Yes.
Hopefully it gets across.
Okay. Okay. So this is a ranking question. Please rank the following items according to what the majority of students use AI for. Is it to improve their writing and research skills, to play games and entertain themselves, to communicate with friends and family, to learn about the world, to generate creative content like art and music, to learn a new language, or to answer questions? Be honest. Yeah.
I said, I wonder if we would have different answers if students were answering this and they knew that it was completely anonymous. And I might put it as a different question of rank order, what's your favorite use of AI?
Okay, that's more positive than I thought, actually. I didn't think that number 2, to improve their writing and research skills, would rank so high, actually. Okay. To answer questions, I guess they use it as a Google search engine.
Yeah, I think that was my suggestion, actually. That's what I use it for. Sometimes I just don't know the answer to something and I use ChatGPT.
Yes.
That's the
That's
cheating.
cheating. Yeah. Okay, so all this time, I have avoided using the term global citizenship and global citizenship education. And that's actually coming from the forum that we did last year. And I remember James made a comment about how global citizenship education is such an abstract term, and it might be better reserved for academics in their academic institutions talking about it, rather than people or students, the masses talking about something, because they might not care, or they might not be able to afford to care about the global, because so many local issues are taking up their time and their survival and their money and energy. So why should they care about the global? However, I think everything that we discussed until now actually falls into global citizenship education, being creative, thinking more process-oriented.
Social justice,
Social justice.
contributing to the common good.
So indirectly talking about global citizenship education.
Yeah, and I think the connection between the local and the global is and must be a starting point on all discussions on global citizenship education. Otherwise, it becomes just an elitist concept available to some but not to others, particularly students in the Global South from developing countries. That's why I wrote a book, Global Citizenship Education in the Global South, because we wanted to understand how educators and their students understand and appreciate the concept from a Global South perspective. That's another discussion that is important to bring in when we discuss global citizenship education. In order to be really global, has to embrace the local, has to be ethically oriented, as I argue in this book in Cambridge University Press, and then it has to really foster critical thinking. It has to help on discussions. Is a pedagogical platform that has to help us to really direct learners and individuals to understand the importance of artificial intelligence and new technologies, but also understand the good points, but also understand the bad points. So let's call it in this way, to speak frankly about the concept. But I'm really curious to learn from you, if that's okay, the question that I'd like to share with you, perhaps 2 or 3 people, because I think we will close at 1. 2 or 3 people from the audience, if you could tell us what are your thoughts on this highly debated notion of global citizenship education, that would be nice. Who wants to try perhaps framing? Yes, please. Or also, if you have any question, reaction, you're free. No boundaries.
So this is something that is a really interesting question, I think, and I was thinking about it a lot recently because in my recent field work, I was in Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt. And one of the things that really struck me is the motivations of the people who take our scholarship programs. They are very patriotic feeling people. They all are very much influenced by their own local experiences before they're concerned about global issues in a lot of cases. The previous person I mentioned was interested in malaria prevention because that's a big problem in that particular part of East Africa. One of them was interested in protection against lightning strikes because that's a big problem in that part of the world. But the way that they're solving these problems has global impacts as well. So while they're solving local problems, they're also solving global problems too. Like, even though this person was initially interested in malaria prevention in Rwanda, the same method could potentially be used across the world. So even if she's not thinking about global citizenship education per se, she's still contributing to global goods. She's still saving lives. And she was using AI to do that. So I think we as educators, what we can do is give them the tools and the knowledge that they need to pursue AI in a responsible way that helps them solve both local and global issues.
Exactly. And I would add, this is a very important perspective, thank you, because I would add that another important issue is really to try to move the focus away from this all overwhelmingly oriented higher education, fostering just skills for the international job market, important as they are, to a focus on more ethical values such as social justice. This is really needed, in my opinion. And so, when it comes to ethical values, critical values, this whole discussion on how our learners and individuals more in general can contribute to the common good by doing what you just said, then if we, encourage a focus on caring ethics, that's one of the principles I discuss in this book, Ethical Global Citizenship Education. Then perhaps step by step, we can also foster leaders who have a different perspectives on the world. Yes.
Brian, I teach here in Tokyo, Meiji University. I really like this question, how do we preserve our humanity? I think as a teacher teaching students, they do want to gravitate towards using AI. I think there needs to be something where we teach them, don't go to AI. Be creative. We have to go through that process in order to be creative and to think of ideas. If we always shuffle it off towards AI, how are we being human that way? If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, there needs to be, I think, something in the education system that says, this is the time to use AI, this is the time when you should be using your own brain to come up with new ideas and be creative.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another crucial point. Thank you for sharing that. I believe the capability of the educator or practitioner or someone who is involved with sharing pedagogical principles, educating, particularly in relation to young individuals, is really to be able to use the necessary wisdom to direct young learners to develop their own creativity and use, in case, AI as a tool to expand their own creativity. For example, because I do write a lot and I publish a lot of books and academic articles, sometimes really your creativity needs an input, can be a draft, can be a title of a paper that AI provides 5, 6 different options, and you look at these options and says, okay, which one is really in tune with my own, way of approaching this topic? This is just perhaps a very basic example, but in that, toward that direction, perhaps AI is useful, but it cannot be a substitute for our own human potential, because that's the risk. Because it's already very complicated to foster young learners' human potential, what I call human empowerment, it becomes even more difficult for them to develop their human creativity if all they do is to use AI as a substitute. Yes.
I'm Carol Mitchell from the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, medical faculty. It's very interesting that in one of the questions, we said that most of the students were goal-oriented, but we actually caused them to become goal-oriented. Because when we set our exams and our evaluations and all of those things, we expect certain kinds of responses. And that is what is causing a lot of the issues we are seeing. It's not, AI is not, does not have that subjectivity that we have, right? But we are educating our students to become very objective, not using their creativity, not thinking critically, because we expect them all the time to respond very quickly to situations that require only a particular response. So for example, if you give an MCQ, how much critical thinking are you going to be expecting that student to come with that response based on the fact that it can only be one response? And so we, from very young, we have been teaching them to be goal-oriented. And you see it in the questions that was just answered. We say, oh, they're goal-oriented. But actually, we are causing them to become goal-oriented rather than process-oriented or critical thinkers or anything else because of what we are expecting.
Excellent. Yes, that's right. So this brings us back to what I was saying at the beginning of this forum. What is the real purpose of education? What is the real purpose of education? What is the real purpose of an ethically oriented global citizenship education? Perhaps, at least this is how I see it and how I write about this concept of global citizenship education from an ethical perspective. Perhaps one of the merits is exactly to bring back on the table discussions around the purposes of education with, and this is evident, we have this overwhelmingly, this is very much encouraged from the university's leadership too, with this focus on skills, this focus on goals, this focus on fostering individuals for the international job market. Again, important as it is, it cannot be the main focus of an higher education and education in general, because if we keep fostering individuals toward this direction, the risk is that we have leaders as the leaders we have today. This is my opinion. And I wrote about that in the, thank you. In the Emergence of the Ethical Engaged University, which is one of the books I wrote with a colleague, we make exactly this point. We need an ethical engaged university which looks not only at skills, development, but also ethical values development, which includes social justice, sustainability, and ethically oriented pedagogy, discussions around values, how we can make our societies more sustainable and work toward peace. I believe
I think that, yeah.
we are, yes?
That concludes
All
the
right.
discussion. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, well, I know there's so much more to discuss, and I really would love to see every one of you discussing this at the coffee break, during lunch breaks, perhaps with Dr. Bosio, if he sticks around.
Yes,
here.
and quickly, let me mention, Melina, that I have here 2 copies of the Ethical Global Citizenship Education. I'm happy to present these if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. So you need to show me a screenshot, just a joke, if you wish.
Well, okay. Thank you so much. This concludes the forum session. You have a lunch break until 2:30, I think. Yeah. Thank you.